guys, and welcome back to Jalen Says. And today we are with a pastor, chaplain, a motivator, an actress, a published author, a model, and she's really cool lady. Dr. Monica K. Harris is just incredible. I don't know how she manages all these things, and it's a lot, and I don't know how she manages it, which makes her even cooler in my opinion. So to introduce herself even further, here's Dr. Monica K. Harris. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you today?
I am doing fantastic.
Awesome. Awesome.
So can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. My name is Dr. Monica K. Harris, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I am so humbled by that. But I am the CEO and founder of My Scars Ministries. I am also the office administrator for a geriatric psychiatric practice specializing in Alzheimer's and dementia. I am an actress. I am also an author. I did some modeling in the past before. I've been in stage plays, etc. So I have a lot on my plate.
Wow. Wow. So to get this started off, what made you want to do all these things? What made you want to kind of be a voice?
Wow. So the answer to that question is I never really wanted to be a voice at all. I was, so to speak, called to be a voice. And I know, you've probably heard people prophesy into your life and tell you things that you're going to do or you're going to be, and you're like, no, I can't see it. And to give you an example of that, I watched your first sermon last week, and it was amazing.
Thank
And
you.
so I remember being, at your age, people speaking into my life, you're going to be a pastor, you're going to be an evangelist, you're going to be bigger than Paula White or Juanita Bynum. And I'm like, no, I can't see it. Because that's not something I wanted to do.
Mm.
And I guess other people could see it, but I couldn't. So there were events that happened in my life that pushed me into doing what I'm doing. And if you are ready for me to elaborate on those, I will.
All right. All right. All right. So you say you didn't really want to do all this. You didn't really want to go out there. People kind of put the thought into your mind and it grew. So, what's the most amazing thing that you didn't even think of was going to happen out of all the things that you do that you are very appreciative of that the people around you put that into your mind?
Well, the most amazing thing I think is me being ordained as a chaplain, me being ordained as a pastor, me even having my own ministry and being able to be a voice to the people. And that's amazing to me because that really is not something I wanted to do. The medical field is another aspect. I've always wanted to be in the medical field, so I'm exactly where I want to be in that field.
Yeah.
But the ministry is something else. I always believed in God. I always prayed, but there were times being younger that I was even afraid to speak before an audience or speak before people. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so, what happened in my life, if you want me to tell my story, is in 2009, I had a near fatal car accident. And when I had that car accident, I was in Grady for almost 2 months.
Wow.
And then I left Grady and I went to inpatient rehab for another month. And the doctor said I'd never use my upper body again. And if I did use my arms and my hands again, it would be years. Well, when I was laying there in that bed, I refused to accept that. And I felt like I did have a calling on my life and I was running from my calling. And God said, for this one right here, I got to lay her flat and minister in her ear because he knew that if he had broken an arm or a leg, I would have kept on doing what I was doing my way and not his way. So while I laid bedridden in that bed for those months, he ministered in my ear. And my scars was birthed because I have scars on both arms. When I had my car accident, my SUV flipped. And when it flipped, it ended up on its side, and I hit the cement median wall. It was on I-20 here in Georgia. And
Wow.
so I hit the cement median wall, and my vehicle continued to drag down the highway about a half a mile probably. But my arm, my left arm, was dragging out of the window with my vehicle because my window was down.
Wow.
This arm was broken because when it flipped, I hit the console so hard that it flew out of the windshield. And all I remember saying is this vehicle ever going to stop? Because I had no control on it. I'm laying down now. And I remember as soon as the vehicle stopped, there was a man at my door. I don't know where this man came from. I don't know how he got there that quick. And I remember saying, God, help me. And he said, don't worry, he is. And as soon as the paramedics came, he was gone. So I call that man my angel. He was an angel. He was there with me on the highway right at the time of my accident. And so I developed a lot of scars, as you would think. I had broken ribs and everything. And so again, my prognosis was not very good. It was poor. But when I got out of rehab, uh, I went back to work within 6 months. And when I went back to work, I could only use my forefinger. And on top of all this, when I got out of the hospital and rehab, my husband left me
Wow.
5 days after I got out. And so there I was, wrapped up like a mummy, couldn't do anything for myself. I've had this horrific accident. I have all these physical and emotional scars. Now my husband left me, so I have mental, physical, emotional scars. Then the church kind of let me down while I was there. So I had spiritual scars. And so when I went back to work and I was telling one of my patient's daughters what happened because I had been out of work for so long, and then I go back, I'm still wrapped up like a mummy.
Wow.
They want to know what happened. She's crying. And she said, when you follow Jesus, you have to carry your own cross. And the only difference between you and him is you now carry your cross on your arm. So don't ever be afraid to show your scars. And I thought that was profound. And then I had a friend on Facebook, Dr. Margaret Reed, and we talked a lot. And she said, you need to start a ministry. You know, you should call it My Scars.
Wow.
And that's where it came. I started a Facebook group, and my group was just started to empower, uplift, and elevate people that had gone through divorces or painful experiences like I had. And it grew.
Yes.
And once it grew, people began to see me, and then there were other ministers that would reach out to me and they wanted me to come on or be a part of their show. And I went from having a Facebook group to doing a prayer call. And I was like, no, God, I can't do that because I can't pray on this line. I'm just like, he was like, you're going to do
Yeah.
it. And so I did that for a few months. And then he said, okay, now you're going to do a Bible study. And I'm like,
Wow.
no, I'm not. You know, I'm arguing. I'm like, no, I'm not. And he's like, yes, you are.
Wow.
And
So
so I, go ahead.
I see you doing a lot of hand movements, which means your hands are and arms are perfectly fine. But how long?
Nice.
Yeah, man. But how long did it take for you to heal?
Oh my God.
First physically, then emotionally.
So physically, it took years, um, because I went to physical therapy every other day for an entire year when I got out of the hospital. And so the simple things that we take for granted, like scratching an itch or opening a car door or a pop. I'm from the north, so I say pop and not soda. Opening a pop can or something of that sort. You know, we take those things for granted because we do them every day, but I couldn't do them. So each little step in physical therapy was quite an achievement and a journey for me. And then when I was able to do those things in less time than they said or thought, because again, remember The doctor said I'd never use this one ever again. And this one was iffy. So, it took probably about 2 years for the physical, um, and the emotional took probably about, I would say, about 3 years, because it's devastating to go through those things, but then when you go through them and you're alone, and that person that you think is going to be there walks out on you, that's devastating. But I understand God's purpose in it, because I believe that if he had stayed, it would have prolonged my healing physically. And I just, it made me better and not bitter. Whatever happened, happened. And I'll just be honest, it happened because of my disobedience. We pray and we ask God to give us a sign for things, and he doesn't necessarily have to, but out of his grace and his mercy, sometimes he does. And he gave me a sign not to do it. And I said, but this, Lord, but the invitations are out, but this, but that. And I did it anyway. And because he gave me the sign and I knew I wasn't supposed to, and I disobeyed, I suffered the consequences. So am I bitter towards my ex? Don't hate him. I'm not bitter. The situation and the experience made me better, because without it, I wouldn't be who I am today.
So, what was your process with healing emotionally?
I'm the type of person, I will go in a shell. I'll withdraw from everyone until I feel like I can come back out. Kind of like a turtle, I go into my shell for protection. But with this one, I spent a lot of time with God, a lot. And I would also get um, like self help books on top of the Bible. And I would go online and I would look at people that had been divorced, and kind of groups and what they went through. So I guess you can say I did my own part of therapy on myself by reading a lot and spending a lot of time with God. And that healed me. And so it it truly taught me, how the Bible tells you you're supposed to pray for your enemies and those who spitefully use you. When I know that I can pray for a person that did me wrong, then I know I'm healed. When I can see that person and there's no animosity, I know I'm healed. And there's absolutely no animosity at all. I could see him today and say, "How are you?" And I wish you the best. And that's how I feel, and that's from the heart. So, and that again, like I said, it took a while, because divorce in itself is traumatizing. But to go through a divorce and having gone through everything that I went through, so basically, I lost my husband, I lost the house, I lost the car because it was destroyed in the car accident. I still had my job, but I had to rely on somebody to get me there. I had to rely on somebody to take me to physical therapy. So basically, God stripped everything from me, except my children. But He stripped those things from me. But He gave me double for my trouble.
Okay. Okay. Now, before we get into my scars and just the road to self help,
Mhm.
can you tell me what made you want to also act, model, and do all these industry things?
Oh wow! So from being a little kid, I always had this thing for acting. Never really pursued it, and then I would always have people tell me, "Oh, your voice is amazing, so you need to do something with your voice." And it was, okay, I really don't like to be out in the forefront. I'll get out there, but if I can do some voiceovers, I'm happy. And so my voice is on several things like voicemails.
Wow.
Yeah, and people will say, "Hey, can we get you to do our greeting for our company?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I don't have a problem doing that. I didn't really get into the quote unquote acting until I moved here to Atlanta. I had done one stage play in Ohio, but when I moved here to Atlanta, I got into the acting a little more, and it's more of a I like it, and I want to do more things with it. And I just feel like, okay, well, all it takes is to be in the right place at the right time. And you know that. So it gives me, what I want to say, enjoyment to make others feel good, no matter what it is. So if it's acting or if it's, just being on stage in a play, if I can bring some sort of enjoyment to somebody else, that gives me a fulfillment and kind of got pushed out there. So a lot of things just fell into my lap.
Yeah.
And I just thank God for those. So I continue to pursue them. I would like to pursue them more, but of course I have a career and that takes a lot of my time as
Yeah.
well. So I can't give as much to it as I would like to.
Wow. Also, how did you end up getting like big roles as being the voice of some people's voicemail, and like what was the journey on that? Because that's
Again, as I told you, things just fall into my lap. So someone would call the office and they'd say, "Who is that on your voicemail?" And I'd say, "Okay, that's me. Oh, we need you to come do ours." And so, I'd gotten offers from radio stations to come do like a show. But of course, the times conflicted with my schedule and I couldn't do it. And I wasn't going to leave my career to go do that because they weren't paying me enough. So it's like, okay, this is something I can do on the side. So I've had many, many people in my life to tell me, speak it into existence because they've been telling me this is what you need to do. I see you doing this, I see you doing that. And I'm like, okay. So I went for it. And then the opportunities just fell in my lap.
so. You said you also, as a young kid, you had like a dream of seeing all these big stars. Have you ever done on camera acting?
I've been on camera acting.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
How did you like the experience?
It's different. It's a lot that goes on that people don't understand that goes on. And again, as I told you, I was really shy in the first place, and like I don't want to be a people person. I don't want to be out front. I don't want people seeing me. But it was quite an experience, and I would love to continue to do those things. So hoping that someone big like Mr. T. Key, we all know who that is, may happen to see you or me at any given time and give us
Yeah.
a role on one of his series or in a movie. I'm really a comedian at heart as well. I make people laugh all the time, and I tell them I think that should have been my second career.
Okay. Okay. Wow. So you act, you model.
And the modeling was a hobby, and I
Okay.
didn't do it religiously. I modeled for a few designers here in the area. I really would like to get into some print modeling rather than runway. And again, but my schedule is so busy, it's hard to try to incorporate all of these gifts that God has blessed me with into my schedule. But I do a little modeling, and again, the print modeling will be something that I do, on the side.
Wow. That's, wow. Okay. So you model, you act, you minister, you're a doctor. Okay. So
Chaplain.
how long have you been ministering? Because you said that was kind of prescribed to you.
Okay, so that after my accident, remember, because I was running from my calling, and it was during the time that I lay bedridden that God spoke into my ear, and it was like He downloaded these things into my spirit. And so, but even during that time, I never expected to be a pastor. So my ministry started in 2010. And so I've been ministering since 2010. In 2017, I was ordained as a pastor. And then in 2018, I was ordained as a chaplain. And so last year, wait, what's this, 2023? Um, 2021, I was a certified chaplain. Then I went through in EMET seminary, and then was a theological school, and went through there and got my doctorates of honorary doctorates in theology, and also my other certification in chaplaincy. So I had a busy year during COVID. During COVID, and that's when I also was an author and co-author, not co-author, but cooperating author in another book. So all that happened like during COVID. But mind you, I was never quarantined at home. We still had to work every day.
Yeah.
So I'm still working and still doing all of this other stuff. But again, it was all, somebody said, you need to do this. Come with me. I need you to do this. And I'm like, what? And I go with them. And the next thing you know, here I am in school, and here I am doing this and taking courses. And here I am.
Yeah. That's so it just kind of grew out of nowhere.
It grew, but I know that the seed was there, planted in an early age. I know that um, that this is something that God wanted me to do. And if you talk to a pastor and they tell you, oh, I just wanted to do this, and I went to theological school and I got my master's in theology, and this is what I've always wanted to do. I believe that to be effective, you're called. Because I don't know any real minister or pastor that said, I want to do this. If you line a 10 up, I will guarantee you that 7 out of the 10 say, I never wanted to do this. I never knew I'd be doing this. God calls you, and you don't understand the calling maybe when you're younger, but that's when I told you people were speaking into your life. I did my first trial sermon probably when I was 17, 18, and was told at that time, this is what I was going to do. And I'm like, yeah, no, not me. But here I am, years later. We're not going to say how many.
So a lot of these seeds happened and were kind of nurtured when you're a child. Can you tell the audience about your childhood?
Hmm. Well, I am an only child, and I was born to a 15-year-old mother. And my mother, at that age, of course, you're not capable of really taking care of a baby. So my grandparents raised me, and they legally adopted me when I was 5 years old. And I thank God for my grandparents and my grandmother. She was a praying grandmother. She taught me how to pray, and she taught me how to be strong, and she instilled morals and values in me that I know that my mother, God rest her soul, wouldn't have been able to instill in me because she was too young. And so I thank God for that. My childhood was, my grandparents loved me, and I know they loved me. My mother loved me, and I know she loved me. It was kind of difficult because I kind of was the black sheep of the family. I was like an outcast, and I just couldn't ever figure out. I just felt unloved by my family, and couldn't understand why. And it wasn't until I got older that I understood that they treated me that way because my grandfather, as much as he loved me, he was a mean man, and he was mean to all of his children. He was mean to my grandmother. In today's court system, it would be child abuse and domestic violence, I'm sure. And but to me, I was daddy's little girl. Wherever daddy went, I went. Whatever I wanted, daddy was like, "You got it. Don't mess with Monica. That's my baby." And so, them not understanding that, how can he love her like that? And he didn't love us like that. We didn't get that. So they didn't understand. And so I'm sure that because they didn't understand his love for me, they couldn't get back at him. So the hurt was reflected upon me. And it wasn't, no one's ever told me that, but it wasn't until I got older and, started praying about it that God gave me that revelation is, when we expect people to love us, sometimes they don't know how to love because they haven't been loved correctly. And so my childhood, otherwise, it was good. I knew that I had a special gift when I was young because my grandmother would always tell me, baby, I only went to the sixth grade, so, I can't help you with your homework. And I would cry. And I would cry and I would lay down on the floor, and it was like while I'm asleep, God would reveal these things to me. And I'd wake up and I'd say, it's okay, Mom, I know how to do it. And I made straight A's all the way up until, say, the 11th grade. I started looking at little boys and, the grades kind of dropped. But I made straight A's. And all I would do is just pray, and God would reveal those things to me.
Wow. So you say your grandfather and you had a special bond. Did you guys happen to like share some similar interests?
I don't think we shared any similar interests. Daddy worked. He was a hard worker. And, as a little girl, I have a vivid memory of him, and just remembering that before I even started, like kindergarten, every day Daddy would bring his lunchbox home and he'd leave me half sandwich and always his dessert. So it was either a Twinkie or one of the little Hostess cupcakes or something of the sort. But I'd wait for him, and it's hilarious because he had a recliner. Love that recliner. Every day when he came home, I take that lunchbox. I get what was mine. We had these little brown glasses. I get my little brown glass and I get his Budweiser out of the refrigerator. I take him his Budweiser and I sit on his lap. He'd open it. He'd pour me a tad, and he'd drink his beer. And I said, "That was Daddy," and I would drink that beer with him. And back in the old days, people say, "Oh, it's good to keep the worms away" or whatever. Probably why I don't like beer now. But those type of things, and it wasn't enough to hurt me or get me drunk. He's just that's our bonding moment, and he would sit me on his lap when he's driving his truck, things of that sort. He was really an outdoors man, and we had a garden, and he'd be out there in the garden, and I'd go out there and help him. So I often tell everyone nowadays, you don't know what real food tastes like because I've actually been out there and can pick a tomato off the vine and eat it, and it's juicy and it's red and it's good, or a really good watermelon. So those are the memories I have of him, and I was really young, really young.
Wow. So how was your relationship with your mother?
My mother and our relationship was more like a sister relationship. I loved her and I knew she was my mother, but again, I never lived with my mother. And we didn't begin to get close until I was older. Actually, when I moved to Georgia, which was in 2003, we had gotten a lot closer. Unfortunately, in 2005, she passed away at 52 years old. So, um, my dad, my biological father, I didn't know who he was until I was 16 years old. And so I knew him for 3 years, and then he passed away at 39 years old. And he and my grandfather passed away 3 months apart. And that was in 1989. So that was hard for me. Yeah. So I'm basically no grandparents, no parents, only child.
Wow. So how did you get past those hurdles and losses in your life?
The losses were hard. And again, even though I hadn't accepted my calling yet, I've always had a strong relationship with God. And I know that it was prayer, and I know that it was God that got me through those things. And I just remember sitting back, saying probably a few years ago, it was like, I've lost my parents. They were really young, when they passed away, 39 and 52. And I lost my grandparents, and all, my great grandparents. I've moved away from all of my family. I don't have any family here in Atlanta. And then, we get married and it fails and you go through that and then the really bad car accident and not to mention all the times that the doctors have tried to diagnose me with something terminal and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not receiving that. And that God has healed me so many times. And so I asked him, what is it? Not why me, but what is it? And he specifically told me that you don't have a testimony without a test. And if I haven't gone through something personally myself, I can't really help you. I can empathize with you, but I can't really help you. But if I've gone through all of these things myself and I've survived and I'm here,
Yes.
then I can relate to you a whole lot better had I not experienced it. So God used me to be able to bless someone else and help someone else that may be going through something similar. And I'm telling you, I don't think there are too many things that I haven't gone through. I don't think there are too many.
Wow. Wow. And I have an important question for you, but before that,
Mhm.
was it a struggle getting to have a relationship with your father?
It was. Yeah, I remember saying to my grandmother, I don't have a father. And she would always say, yes, you have a father. And I was like, I don't know him. He could walk up to me on the street and slap me in the face and I wouldn't know who he was. So I don't want to know him. At this stage, I didn't want to know him. But I'll never forget, I was at my grandmother's house. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. And one of my mom's best friends knocking on the door. And I'm like, who is that knocking on the door at 2 o'clock in the morning? And so I get up and I go to the door and I open the door and she said, Monica, this is your father. I brought your father to meet you. And I'm like, what? 2 o'clock in the morning. Out of nowhere, I'm 16 years old, and here's my father. And so I embraced him, and we talked. And I cherished the 3 years that we had together. He introduced me to a lot of the families that I didn't know. I had gone to school with first cousins and didn't even realize it. So it's important that you know who your relatives are. And that was a blessing. And unfortunately, 3 years wasn't a lot of time, but it was enough time to form a relationship, forgive, and and meet my other family members who I'm close to a lot of them. A lot of them I know, a lot of them I haven't met, but it gave me the opportunity to meet them, and I'm still close with my uncles on that side. So it was a great opportunity, and I'm grateful because had I gone through life and never met him and he passed away, it would have been kind of devastating.
So, with all these trials in your life, what has that taught you on how to help others?
It it has taught me to be um, again more sympathetic when people are going through, but it's also taught me how to minister to them in what I'm doing right now. If there's someone who doesn't have a father, I can minister to them. Someone who's lost their mother and their father and their entire family, I can minister to them. Someone who's been abandoned, I can minister to them. Someone who's been mistreated by your family, I can minister to them. You lost everything, I can minister to them.
Wow.
You've been on your deathbed, I can minister to them. You've been diagnosed with cancer, I can minister to them. You know, you've been told you'll never do something or you can't do this, you can't do that. I can minister to them.
Wow.
I'm living proof.
That's, that's incredible. Wow. So, My Scars ministry, what really wanted you to teach? Well, I guess, yeah, teach, minister, to help people to forgive and grow and heal.
Okay. Again, I'm going to tell you this is not something I wanted to do. But um, the important part of healing is forgiveness. Because if you're harboring unforgiveness, you can't move forward. It's like cancer eating at you. You know, if you don't get rid of it by the root, then it's going to infect your whole body. And I always tell people, you should never give another person that much control over you. If I don't forgive, that means I'm letting the other person control my feelings. They're going to dictate how I feel that day. They're going to dictate how I think. They're going to dictate whether I'm mad or happy. I'm not giving anyone that much power over me. So forgiveness is for me more than the other person. Not only that, God tells us, look at all the things we've done. We're like filthy rags. There are a lot of things that we've done that we shouldn't even get forgiveness for. But yet he forgives us. So if we want him to forgive us, then we have to forgive others for what they've done to us. So that's my part of healing, and that's what's important. So that's the first step in healing. Anytime. If you are harboring any type of unforgiveness within you and you need healing from anything or you need to move forward, you have got to forgive. And that other person does not necessarily have to accept your forgiveness, but you have to forgive them in your heart. And once you forgive them in your heart, then you can move on. I can give you an example of when God has changed my life over these years. I reached out to the people that I knew that I had done wrong, and I asked them to forgive me.
Wow.
Some of them said yeah, the other ones cussed me out, was like nope, and I'm like okay, that's on you. But one particular person, and I asked for forgiveness, and she really did. She let me have it, and she should have, and it's okay. And so I said, okay, well you don't have to forgive me, but I'm asking. And I want you to know that I'm sorry. I apologize for what I did to you and any hurt that I caused you. She wouldn't forgive me. But she saw me one day because she hadn't seen me in years. She saw me face to face. And when she saw me, she looked at me and she said, you changed. She could see it. She could see the God in me. And she asked me for a hug. So that let me know that I was living right and that even though she didn't accept it at the time, when she saw me, she did. So that's important. If you want to heal, if you want to move forward, you have to learn to forgive. And so because of everything that I went through, maybe I can alleviate someone else from taking wrong turns or going through that journey. Um, I had to go through what I went through again because of disobedience and because I was running from my calling. But maybe if I had somebody there that said, girl, you better listen or you need to do this, don't do this, do this, then it wouldn't have gone that way. So if I can help someone, with their decisions to make the right choices, to understand their worth, that's one of the things that's really important for male and female. I need everyone to understand and recognize their worth. And then you won't settle for a lot of things. And you'll be able to wait on God.
Yes. Wow.
Mm.
So you are also a published author. So
Mhm.
can you tell me, what is the book about? Is it about healing, forgiveness, or is it about a completely different topic?
Well, it's this book, if you can see it,
My Scars.
and it's My Scars, Testimonies of Survival and Triumph. And I can tell you how this came about. So Chuck Brown had reached out to me, and he was doing an anthology, and it was during the time of George Floyd incident, and he was doing it with men, and it was called The American Nightmare, being a black man, in America. Then he came out with one for women, and so I was a part of that one, The American Nightmare, being a black woman in America. So I wrote my chapter for that anthology, and when I was on the last page, God spoke to me and he said, "You need to do one of these." And I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Okay." So I reached out to Chuck and I was like, "I need to do one of these." He said, "Okay, go for it." And so God said, "And you need to find people who have awesome testimonies that have survived and triumphed over it." And I'm like, "Really?" So he gave me the title, he gave me the name, he told me who I needed to get. I put a blast out, I got all these submissions. I had to pick 5 out of them. And when I tell you it was awesome, that was like in October, the end of October. And I'm gathering all this information. And by the end of December, the book was out. So that's how you know it was God, because he laid it on my spirit. When I was finishing the last paragraph, he told me what I needed to do. Just was like, pick your cover, get your people, get it together, and let's make it happen. And that's what happened. And it is a book filled with testimonies, from different perspectives. There women, there's a man, but there you are, awesome. And some of them will make you cry, and some of them will make you realize how fortunate you are, and you really have nothing to complain about. And so everyone that has read it, I've gotten rave reviews. It's still selling. People are still asking for it. So that's how My Scars, Testimonies of Survival and Triumph came
Wow. Okay.
about. Hmm.
And also, you helped make another book too. So,
Hmm.
what brought that one up?
Well, that was the book that Chuck was working on, the anthology. Um, and he was looking at views from African American women in America on how it is being an African American woman here in America. And so mine in there was more or less like a teaching and things that we need to get back to. We need to get back to learning how to treat the man like the man and allowing him to lead. But then again, the man also needs to be taught how to lead, because many of them, when you get married, it's like, okay, I'm the man and you're supposed to submit to me, and that's it. And I think that's why a lot of African American women are so gung ho about, no, I'm not going to submit. But if you realize that if you both are submitting to God and you both are doing what he wants you to do, then you're actually submitting to him, and then submitting to each other won't be a problem at all. When Sarah called Abraham Lord in the Bible, it was because she reverenced him as such. It was because that's how she saw him, because he was doing what he was supposed to do as the head of household. So again, we need to bring the family unit back together. It's all been separated, and I talked about that, how it was separated, in the 70s probably, when they started allowing women to get Section 8. Because if I got Section 8 or help government housing, I don't need a man. Actually, I can't have one, because if I got housing, I have housing for me and my children, and now I'm the head of the household. And so, if I'm married, I'm not going to be approved to get it. But if I'm not married, I can't let the father of my children be in the same household with me, because that's not allowed. And so it was the breakdown and the restructuring of the African American family. So we just need to wake up and get back together, get back to our roots, and realize the unity that we need to have in the family and family values and make it work without that assistance. Two people work, whatever we got to do, what we got to do to make it happen for the family. But that's what the important thing is. So that's a little bit about what I wrote about in that book.
Wow. Okay. And also, you and Mr. Chuck are making a documentary.
Oh, yeah. So we are working on a documentary called Remember Me. And it is a documentary on awareness of Alzheimer's and dementia in the African American community. And Chuck uh, has been affected by it with family members that kind of caught him off guard when he went to visit. And so he, he wanted to know more about this illness. And me, working for a geriatric psychiatrist who specializes in Alzheimer's and dementia, it's like, yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be done. So, in collaboration with him, I have been providing him resources and some of the doctors and facilities that I know that are helping the patients and families, and also bringing awareness of what you need to look for in your loved one to determine if your loved one is developing dementia or Alzheimer's. And you look like you wanted to say something.
Oh, no, no, no. I was saying,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So yeah, so that's something that's near and dear to his heart. Also, my grandmother suffered from Alzheimer's in the end as well, so it's very personal for me as well. But the word needs to get out, education to the African American community, and so he's doing some fundraising and like statuses for the actual documentary, where you can contribute to helping this documentary go nationwide. So that's something that I'll put up, and I'll ask him to put back up on his page as well for those that are interested in helping to get some funding so this information can get out to the community all over.
Okay. And also, with helping the community, you also have an annual Thanksgiving and Christmas, basically adopting a family and just helping them. And it's really cool how you do that. And why did you want to do that?
Well, my Scars ministry is a solo ministry. So I am an LLC. I did that during COVID as well. And so, but I kind of do everything, myself. But there are so many needy families out there that don't have. And so if I have, I get joy in giving. And so every year, because it's just me right now, and I want it to grow eventually, and I'll tell you about my journey and my vision with that. But I I take up donations, and I don't donate them to a family during Thanksgiving, so that they have a turkey, a ham, and enough food and fixings for a family to enjoy a Thanksgiving dinner. And also for Christmas, I adopt a family, and not just the children, but mom and dad too, if mom and dad are together, or if it's just mom or dad, and help them to make their Christmas a little brighter.
Wow.
And I also used to go out and feed the homeless until I would do that until Atlanta came down with all these laws where you couldn't be where I was at without a license or permit, and so it got a little hard. And I had to hunt for them in different areas. But yeah, I would go out and feed the homeless and go out and distribute during at like wintertime, distribute bags that would have like toiletries and blankets and things of that for the homeless.
Wow. So, what is your goal, or do you have one with helping people?
So there goes my vision. My vision is to actually have a building. Now, the first question I get asked when I tell people that I have a ministry is, "Where's your church?" And I don't have a church, and I don't want a church. Just like I didn't want to be a pastor, I don't want a church. But if God says, then I have to. But my vision right now is to have a building, and the building would have counseling. And so I would have therapists there that could have counseling for children and adults. Also, I want to have a food pantry there where they're able to come in and get food when it's needed, as well as clothing for like interviews if they're going to go on interviews and just basic needs. And also, I want to give a message there, weekly. So whether it's on a Sunday or a Wednesday or whenever, I want to feed them not only what's good for the physical, but what's good for the soul. And so that's my vision. That's what I want to do eventually.
Wow. Okay. So when you're not helping people, being a doctor, modeling from time to time, acting, voice acting, which is a lot of stuff, what do you do to really calm down, to take a breather?
I like to travel. I love the beach. Um, I like to read, and so and sometimes I just like quiet. I like quiet time, and so as much as I seem to be out there, I also enjoy my me time, and so I read, listen to music, and spend time talking to God. But I do that all day, every day anyway. So that's the only way you can make it. But yeah, those are the things that I like to do.
Okay. So is there anything, not maybe not even as a career, but anything that you think would be a cool thing to have or like do or as a hobby?
A cool thing to do as a hobby or have.
Yeah, like cool thing to do as a hobby or do as a job.
Oh, do as a job. Well, I don't. If I landed an acting career, and TP called me up and I could be on screen and on the movies, that would be awesome. So I would really love that. Now that may be one thing, if I could make it my career with that, then this little medical thing would be on the side. So that would be awesome. But as far as anything that I could have, basically what would make me happy right now is if I was debt free. That meant house paid off, no debt, and then I could just, I'd be happy. I'd be happy. If I could win that, if I could have won the $1 billion, I'd be happy. But guess what? A whole lot of other people would be happy too because I get a joy and a thrill from making other people happy. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So you really love traveling. What's one place that's on your bucket list to really want to go?
Ah, there are a few places on my bucket list. So I really want to go to the Holy Land. I want to take that journey and go to Jerusalem and walk where Jesus walked and go where he prayed, and just be there in that presence. My friend had the opportunity to go there this year, and I'm like, that's one of the most amazing things that you could do. And she was baptized in the River Jordan. So I think that would be the ultimate experience. So that's number one on my bucket list. I'd like to go to Dubai. That's on my bucket list. And I've never been to Hawaii. So that's another one. And sidebar to that, let us continue to keep Hawaii in prayer because of all those wildfires and all those people that have lost everything. It's devastating when I look at those pictures and videos on the news. So let us keep them in prayer.
So when COVID, the pandemic first happened in 2020, you still had to go to the job, go to work because you were a doctor. You are a doctor. So,
Well, I'm not a doctor,
yeah,
that type of doctor. I'm a doctor in theology, not a medical doctor, but I work in the medical field.
yes.
Okay, so, but we still had to go to work. Yeah, I worked for a psychiatrist, and we work inside of a hospital, and we have an inpatient behavioral. health unit. And so when when patients with mood disorders or dementia become unstable and the family or facilities can no longer care for them, then we bring them in as an inpatient so that we can get them stabilized. And usually they're there for about a minimum of a week to 10 days, and that's so they can get their medications adjusted, get them stabilized, and then they're discharged back home or wherever. So, as you know, hospitals never close.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were still there.
But even though you weren't working specifically with the COVID patients, was
Mhm.
it more hectic in the area you worked in?
Um, it was hectic because the COVID spread to our units, and so some even recently the entire unit had COVID. So COVID is very much still out there, and so it was hard for families because they wanted to visit, and just imagine, I'm sure it was hard for the patient because number one, you don't want to be locked up in a behavioral health facility anyway, and now to be locked up during COVID, you can't see any loved ones, so that's really kind of hard, and it made it a little more difficult for the patients and them getting better actually.
So, what is the hardest thing about your job?
I love my job. So I there are difficult moments, and a lot of times families can be difficult, more difficult than the patients themselves. And so I think it's a lot of times is we take our job seriously. We're very passionate in my office, in the practice. And so what's hard for us is when other people or other professionals don't have the passion that we have for the patients, it makes it difficult because when everybody works smoothly together, things flow smoothly. But when they don't, you got hiccups, and so that's the biggest problem. Ultimately, we want to make sure the patient is okay, that they're taken care of, and they get what they need, and the families get the support they need. And we would love to get that support from everybody else, but everybody doesn't feel like we feel, and so it gets difficult sometimes. And family members can be really difficult sometimes.
So, how was it when you first got into that field? Like, how was your, I guess, first case, first appointment? I don't know exactly what it's called in that field, but how was your first experience with it?
Ah, well, I've been in the medical field for years. I worked for a neurosurgeon in Ohio before coming here, and so going here was a little different, but it was very informative for me because, as I told you, my grandmother had Alzheimer's. And where I'm from in Ohio, we didn't have geriatric psychiatrists. There, when you got diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia, you went to see a neurologist. And so coming here and actually seeing the patients and all of the different behaviors was kind of a shock for me at first because I didn't realize that most people think that Alzheimer's or dementias are just, oh, they forget things and that's it. Well, that's not it. It's very, very in depth. I mean, when you have patients that can vividly see little people living on their ceiling fan, jumping down into the couch, or they see headless horsemen outside their window, or they don't know, they think their family members are having an affair. All of these hallucinations and delusions are real to them. And that's the biggest thing that we want everybody to understand instead of trying to argue with the patient about, there's nothing there. I don't know what you're talking about. Then I often tell people you have to go into their world and you have to realize that they're not coming back into our world, but we have to go into their world and please them and make them feel like, hey,
I understand what you're saying. I'm going to call the police if they don't leave, you know, and even to the point of, hey, you kids, get away from there. And then they're happy because they feel like you still respect them, you believe them, and they're not, as they would say, quote unquote, people think I'm crazy and I'm not. And so it's just learning to redirect and go into their world.
So you said you work for a neurologist. Does that have anything to do with dementia? And well, does like nerves have anything to do with the dementia and Alzheimer's?
Okay. So I actually worked for a neurosurgeon. And so a neurosurgeon does brain surgery. They operate and remove brain tumors, tumors on the spine. They do back surgeries, anything that's related to the spine, and like they do some carpal tunnels and things of that sort. So that's who I work for. A neurologist, they do the nerves, and if you have MS or Parkinson's or anything of that sort, and so going to them for the Alzheimer's is where everybody would first go because they said, oh, the brain. Yeah, it's the brain, but it's not actually the nerve. And that's why they sent you to a geriatric psychiatrist because he specializes in the brain because that's actually what's going on. And so when you go to the neurologist, they can perform the basic tests for you. But when you start having and exhibiting all those other symptoms and behaviors I just told you about, they don't know how to treat those. And so that's why they send them and refer them to someone who specializes in it a little bit more, which would be the psychiatrist, because at that point, they can give you different medications and a different medication regimen than just a neurologist. Now, a lot of people that have Parkinson's develop Parkinson's related dementia. And so dementia can come from someone having a stroke or any type of lack of oxygen to the brain. And so that's why a lot of people take them to the neurologist because they're thinking, okay, if you go there for the stroke and they're having these issues, or the Parkinson's and they're having these issues. And again, the neurologist can treat you for your beginning stages, but when it begins to get more in depth, that's when they refer you on.
Wow. So how many patients do you see that are of younger age?
Oh, now our patients normally are 65 and older. But lately, we have been seeing younger patients developing dementia as early as 40. And so we don't know, of course, what causes it or how to prevent it. But again, like I said, it's important to take care of yourself because diabetes, heart condition, a stroke, um, anything that again prohibits you getting the correct amount of oxygen, oh, like sleep apnea, anything that prevents you from getting the correct amount of oxygen to your brain can cause you to develop dementia in later stages.
So with seeing things that aren't there, do any of your patients know that they're not real, or are they all just like convinced that it is?
If they're a Alzheimer's or dementia patient, some of them are cognitive enough to know that, okay, I know it's not real, but I see it. But um, if it gets a little further advanced, there's no reasoning with them because what they believe is what they believe. And you basically, you just can't argue with them. You just have to, again, go into their world.
So I know this is a little bit past the time, but I just have one more question
That's
because
okay.
this is really interesting to me. Do they like if their hallucinations go to touch them or like punch them, would they feel it?
That's a really good question because no one has ever told us that one of their hallucinations touched them. Or, um, we do have, and these are delusions. Yeah, we do have delusions where they would say, somebody crawled into the bed last night and raped me. And if you don't know this patient, you're going to believe them. because they're very realistic. And so family members will call and say, my family member was in the facility and they said somebody raped them. Well, nobody raped them. And maybe just go back and look at the camera to see what happened all during the night. Nobody's there. And so they do have these things. So they are capable of saying somebody raped me or somebody beat me. So yeah, that happens.
Wow.
It's amazing how the brain is. And then when it's off, track, that they actually see, feel, and hear these things. There is a virtual dementia tour that people can sign up for that will give them the opportunity to spend about 10 minutes or 15 minutes going through what it's like to be a dementia patient with the the hallucinations and the other things that are going on. And it's awesome. So if you ever have an opportunity to do that, I would. It's a humbling experience.
Wow. But unfortunately, our time is a little over up. But can
Okay.
before you go, can you tell the audience where they could follow you, how they could see more about My Scars Ministry, and just all of your links?
Sure. So you can find me on Facebook under Dr. Monica Kaye Harris. I also have a My Scars Ministry page. It's My Scars Ministry on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter or X at My Scars Ministry. I'm also on Instagram, Dr. Monica Kaye Harris. My website is www.myscarsministry.com. Also, if you want to purchase the book, My Scars, Testimonies of Survival and Triumph, it's available on Amazon, or any other of the links of where books are sold at Walmart and Books a Million, Print Books, all those places. But if you want a signed copy, you can let me know because I can autograph it for you and get that sent out to you. And I think I covered all the basics.
Oh, well, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure being on here. I take it as an honor. You keep being great. I think you're an amazing young man, and I follow you and watch everything you're doing. So just keep up the great work and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. And we will contact you after the show's over.
Okay. Thank you. You have a good night.
Yes, and you as well.
Thank you.
Yes. And thank you to the wonderful audience out there in the audience. Make sure you like, subscribe, share. I really appreciate you guys. I appreciate what you guys have done to get me this far. Also, an event's coming up tomorrow in the Atlanta area. If you're there, it's on my Facebook, Jalen Says TV. Should be there, and I'm gonna be actually no, it's a little couple days, but I'm gonna be there doing a lot of red carpet stuff, doing a lot of cool things, and it's pretty cool. A lot of information's on my Facebook. Thank you guys for watching. A lot of new stuff coming up, a lot more videos, a lot more editing, a lot of stuff like that. And just guys, thank you so much for all the support and stay tuned. Peace.